let us see the adaptations of parasites today. So parasites are those organisms which derive their nutrition or which live either a part of their life cycle or the whole of their life cycle in another organism's body, which is called as the host, and the host will however try to counteract the parasite, but the parasite has to develop those adaptations which will help its successful survival inside the host body. So therefore it will be having a number of adaptations which it acquires during the evolutionary process, and these adaptations which are acquired by the parasite can be morphological, physiological, or related to its reproduction, or it can be circulatory, locomotory, etc. So we will first go to the morphological adaptations of a parasite. The three ways in which a parasite can be adapted in its morphology are through degenerations. So here you can see this is Saculina, which is a parasitic crustacean on its host, which is the crab. So here is the host and this is the parasite, and you can see that it has got a much reduced body because it is a kind of adaptation that it is having no locomotory organelle, because it is deriving its nutrition from the body of the crab, for which it is having some root like processes through which it absorbs the nutrients. So it will be lacking the digestive system or complicated organ systems in the body, and it will be having a very simplified structure. So this can be considered to be a degeneration, whose best example is provided by the Saculina, which is parasitizing on crab. Now the second one is a specialization, and specialization means there are certain structural and functional modifications which will meet the demands of the parasitic mode of life. That is, here you can see the sucker of tapeworm. So this is the anterior region of the tapeworm, which is called as the scolex, where you can see the suckers. So the suckers are so modified to help them attach to the intestinal surface of the host. So this is considered to be a specialization. This is there in other parasites also, but this type of a sucker is seen in such cestode worms. Now the third one is neoformation. Neoformation includes the formation of new structures. So here also I can show you the structure of tapeworm, where it is having certain hook-like spines which will help it to cling to the body of the host. So these are certain morphological adaptations which can be generally categorized as degenerations, specializations, and neoformations. So we will go to the other morphological adaptations of parasites. As we already mentioned, the Saculina, which is parasitizing on crab, is having a reduced size which will help in accommodation on the surface of the host. So they remain unnoticed by the host. Second one is, most parasites are having a suitable shape which is suited to their habitat. For example, parasites like Plasmodium, which live inside the cell of the host, will be very small in size so that they can be accommodated inside the cell. So that's an example. Second is those parasites which live inside the narrow blood vessels. They should be slender and elongated. Then only they can be accommodated inside the blood vessel. Example is the blood fluke schistosome. Then there are parasites which live in the intestine. They will be usually larger, like the tapeworm, Ascaris, etc. Then there are certain parasites which are feeding on liver cells. They will be moderately larger and flat. Example, Fasciola. So according to the habitat in which the parasite is living, their shape will be suitably adapted. Next is the lack of senses or locomotory organs. For example, the tapeworms, they feed on the already digested food of the host, and so they need not move in search of food. So they will not be having locomotor organs. So the expense of maintaining such organs is also evaded. So that is an advantage which is shown by a parasite. They will be lacking sense organs also. Another morphological adaptation is the presence of thick resistant outer covering, which is called as cuticle, which is found in roundworm, hookworm, etc. And the next is the presence of specialized mouth parts, which can be seen in many parasites. One example is that of aphids. Then there are hookworms, pinworms, etc. For example, the hookworms will be having dental plates and teeth-like structures for clinging to the host intestine. So, these are some of the morphological adaptations. So, here we come to the tapeworm, which is a larger worm which is seen in the intestine of man, and this is the anterior region of the tapeworm, which is called as the scolex, where you can see the hooks, and these are the suckers which help in attachment. The hooks help in clinging. Then this is Wuchereria bancrofti. Wuchereria bancrofti, or the filarial parasite, which causes elephantiasis or filariasis, and it is residing inside the blood vessels. The microfilarial form of this parasite is residing inside the blood vessels, and this is characterized by the absence of many organ systems. Nervous system is reduced, locomotory organs are reduced, because it is itself carried by the bloodstream, and it is taken up by a mosquito during blood sucking. So, there is no need of a locomotory organelle, and the sense organs, locomotory organelles, etc. will be absent. So, that is also, degeneration is also an adaptation. Here you can see the specializations of tapeworm. These are the suckers which we already mentioned. So, this is the sucker which through a suction will help this parasite attach to the horse intestine, and these are the hooks which help in clinging. And apart from these, there are structures called as Bothridia, which are muscular projections which arise from the scolex, and they have leaf-like margins. So, these are the muscular projections called as Bothridia, and the others are Bothria. Bothria are the sucking grooves. So, these are the sucking grooves. So, they are all adaptations which help in attachment as well as deriving nutrition from the horse body. So, Bothridia will be the muscular leaf outgrowths which are having leaf-like margins. See, these are the muscular outgrowths, and Bothria are the shallow grooves. Then, as we already mentioned, they will be having resistant coverings. For example, in nematode parasites, they will be having a covering called as the cuticle. This is Ascaris. When you take a cross section through Ascaris, we can see its protective covering, which is called as the cuticle, which is resistant to the intestinal enzymes of the host. And in the flukes, instead of cuticle, we will be able to see a tegument, which is the outer body covering of flatworms. The tapeworms, flukes, etc. have got a tegument. So, these are outer coverings of a parasite which will help to resist the corrosive actions of the horse internal environment. Then another one is Entamoeba histolytica, which is a protozoan parasite, and this Entamoeba histolytica, it is having some infective stages which need to survive outside the body of the horse in open environment. And since they are exposed to harsh environmental conditions, they have to survive those conditions, for which they are encysted. They are having a protective covering, and this makes it an encysted form. So, this covering is called as a cyst, which protects it from the harsh environmental conditions outside, and it is this stage which enters another human being's body. Now, another mechanism apart from the cuticle which helps it resist the horse enzymes are the presence of anti-enzymes. Studies have shown that, this is tapeworm, these tapeworms can produce certain proteins which can be called as anti-enzymes, which will suppress the activity of the horse digestive enzyme. For example, the horse digestive system contains a powerful protein digesting enzyme called as trypsin. It shouldn't damage this parasite because the parasite is there in the horse intestine, for which this tapeworm is producing certain proteins which will help it resist the activity of trypsin. It will suppress the activity of trypsin. So, this has been a study reported in the Molecular and Biochemical Parasitology journal. Now, the ability of the metabolic readjustments in the parasite. So, a parasite, if it lives inside a horse body, if we will take the case of an endoparasite which lives inside the horse body, it can get access to, or it will be thriving in different organs of the host. For example, if it is thriving in the lung, the amount of oxygen in that area is very high. That means it is living in an aerobic condition. Whereas intestinal parasites or parasites which reside in the liver, they are exposed to relatively less oxygen-rich oxygen conditions. So, there are parasites which are exposed to aerobic conditions as well as anaerobic conditions. So, we will go to a parasite which is living in an aerobic environment. Example is the human lung fluke Paragonimus westermanni, and the metabolism of this parasite is in such a way that it is aerobic type. That means its metabolic activities take place in the presence of oxygen, because it is having plenty of oxygen in the habitat in which it is living. So, its metabolism is somewhat of the aerobic type. Whereas, we will go to the intestinal parasites. For example, Ascaris or roundworm. This roundworm lives in either poor oxygen condition or either anoxygenic conditions. So, they can carry on aerobic respiration if there is oxygen, but if oxygen is unavailable, they will switch over to anaerobic type of respiration. So, they can switch over between aerobic and anaerobic type of respiration or catabolism. That is why they are said to be facultative anaerobes. That means they usually live as aerobes, but if a condition prevails, they can switch over to anaerobic mechanism. So, that is why they are called as facultative anaerobes. Then there are some parasites which live as strict anaerobes. For example, Taenia solium, Endamoeba histolytica. For these parasites, they live in conditions where oxygen is very rare for them. So, they have modified themselves in such a way that they are strict anaerobes, which will metabolize in the absence of oxygen. So, among parasites, there are aerobes, there are facultative anaerobes as well as obligatory anaerobes according to the conditions in which they live. So, that is why they readjust their metabolic activities. Then coming to the reproductive adjustments, there are certain parasites which are hermaphrodites. That means the same individual will be having both the male and female sex organs. So, this is also an adaptation. That means it makes sexual reproduction easy. There is no need of a partner. The same individual is producing both sperms and ova. So, there is no need of a partner, and this will help tapeworms to survive inside the host body. So, even if there is only one tapeworm, they can reproduce because the same tapeworm will be able to produce both sperms and ova since they are hermaphrodites. The reproductive potential of parasites is also very high. For example, the tapeworms themselves have got multiple reproductive organs. That means in their segments which are called as proglottids, there are testes as well as ovaries. So, there are many segments in the body of tapeworms which are capable of producing both ova and sperms. So, that is why it is said to be multiple reproductive organs. Then, parasites also have high fecundity. That means the number of eggs they produce is very high. The tapeworms lay about 35,000 eggs per day. The liver fluke or Fasciola hepatica lays about 10,000 eggs per day. Ascaris lumbricoides or roundworm lays about 2 lakh eggs per day. So, even if they are exposed to many risks during their development, they have got a very high reproductive potential. So, at least some of the young ones will survive, and this will ensure continuation of the parasitic race. That is why they resort to high production of offsprings. Next adaptation is one which is called as polyembryony. That means a single embryo gives rise to a number of individuals. Example is liver fluke. So, there will be multiplication of larval stages resulting in the production of many parasites or many infective agents. A single embryo can develop into many organisms. That is what is called as polyembryony. So, we come to the life cycle of Fasciola hepatica or liver fluke, where there are 5 larval stages. The egg hatches out to miracidium. Miracidium hatches out to sporocyst. Sporocyst hatches to rhedia, rhedia cercaria, and cercaria to metacercaria, and finally it again transforms to the adult liver fluke. So, in sporocyst and rhedia, there will be production of germ cells, and these germ cells are direct descendants of the zygote. So, there will be many germ cells inside a sporocyst, and each germ cell inside the sporocyst can develop into a new rhedia. In the rhedia also there will be production of a number of germ cells, and each germ cell can develop into a new cercaria, like that. So, from the single embryo which is developed from the egg, there will be production of a number of individuals. So, this process of reproduction in Sporocyst and Rhedia of Fasciola hepatica is called as polyembryony. So, this also increases the number of individuals in the population. So, even if there are harsh environmental conditions, even if there is difficulty in getting access to the host body, at least some of them become successful. Then, another feature is parthenogenesis. That is the ability of the egg to develop into an organism even without fertilization. That is called as parthenogenesis. So, there may not be the presence of males, but still the eggs develop into young ones. In pseudogamy, the male produces the sperms, but the sperms need not fertilize the ovum. The touching of the sperm to the ovum is only required so as to stimulate cleavage of the ovum. So, the sperm does not contribute anything to the genome of the offspring, it only stimulates the ovum. Or in certain organisms, the ovum can develop without fertilization by the sperm. So, that is called as pseudogamy or parthenogenesis. And an example is shown by Heterotylengous, this parasite, a nematode parasite which is parasitic on this phase fly. So, this is the host and this is the parasite, and this parasite is capable of pseudogamy. That means simply the touching of the sperm is required for initiating cleavage of the ovum. There is no contribution of genome from the sperm. So, that is called as pseudogamy. This also is a parasitic adaptation. Then next is periodicities of the parasites. So, here you can see this is a parasite called as Wuchereria bancrofti or the filarial worm or microfilariae, and this is the vector, the Culex mosquito. So, it is this vector, the Culex mosquito, that takes up these microfilariae from the blood of an infected person and transmits it to another human being. So, in between two human beings, this mosquito will act as the vector to transmit this microfilariae, and both are nocturnal in habit. That is, the microfilariae, they come to the superficial blood vessels of man during night. So, these microfilariae come to the blood vessels of man, the superficial blood vessels which are close to the skin in man, they will come during night, and the Culex mosquito also bites during night. So, both are having nocturnal periodicity, so that when the Culex mosquito bites an infected person, there is more chance of the parasite getting into the Culex body, and then it will transfer it to another human being. So, that is what is meant by the synchronization of periodicities between the vector and the parasite. The vector comes to human superficial blood vessels at the same time when the mosquito comes and sucks human blood. Another example of periodicity is the human pinworm. The pinworm resides in the human intestine, but the adult female pinworm comes to the anal region of human and causes itching. The person will scratch his anal area, and with the scratched fingers, suppose he takes food, or if he contaminates food or water, and if it is taken by himself, the eggs will again enter into his body. So, it is called as auto-infection. That means itching of this person in his perianal area through his fingers, and the contaminated fingers again take these eggs into his mouth through the orophycal route. It is called hand to mouth contamination. And the human pinworm will migrate to the perianal region of man during night, that is when he sleeps. So, with the unconscious or consciously or unconsciously, he will scratch his anal area with his fingers. So, there is more chance of infection. So, that is also an example of periodicity. There is more chance of this person accidentally transmitting these eggs to his clothes, bed sheets, even to his mouth or other areas of the body. This is more commonly seen in children. So, this periodicity also helps the parasite to get easy transmission. Then coming to the response of the host body. So, the host body is having an immune system which will respond to the presence of the parasite, and the host immune system will produce antibodies. But how the parasites will tackle this problem? The parasites generate proteins which are similar to that of the proteins of the host. So they are less detected by the host immune system. So the host immune system will not be able to recognize the parasitic proteins because they resemble the host proteins. It is called as molecular mimicry. There are some parasites like Plasmodium, which causes malaria, and the HIV, which causes AIDS. They will keep on changing the polypeptides on their surface, the antigenic peptides on their surface. So they keep mutating, their genome keeps on mutating, and they develop newer and newer proteins. That means the parasitic antigens are changing in different stages of development. So it is not easy for the host immune system to switch on to the required defense mechanisms. The speed with which the parasitic antigens change their nature will not be acquired by the host immune system. So it will not be able to catch up with the speed by which the parasitic antigens keep on changing. So it is also difficult for us to develop suitable vaccines against these diseases. The problem caused by HIV is the most significant example where we are not able to develop a suitable vaccine because it is highly mutable. It is keeping on changing its antigenic polypeptides. So these are some of the adaptations which you can see in parasitic organisms by which they tide over the defense mechanisms of the host.